Hey, Rosal, the future is quite positive, and I think what use cases are you going to engage that AI interventions with? Because outcomes matter. There's a lot of stigma around AI, and there will be with any new technology. But of course, there are fair concerns that we need to address as well. My main advice is to focus on the fundamentals, how AI really works. The audience has to be biased towards execution as well, post these events and
Yeah.
taking something back
Yeah.
and working towards.
Hi, Oshada.
Hi,
Glad to
Rosal.
have you here in our live podcast booth. Let's just kick things off. Cybersecurity and AI, some really key words. What do you think about cybersecurity and AI, the collaboration, and what do you see the future as?
I think Rosal, the future is quite positive, and I think both of them has to go hand in hand. AI and cybersecurity, I don't think is going to be mutually exclusive. See, for example, if you look at AI, in terms of looking at cybersecurity and how do you improve your cybersecurity posture as an organization, whatever the scale the organization is, there's a lot that AI can bring into the foray. But however, we have to ensure that you use AI with a meaningful approach, a calculated approach, rather than just using AI just as a generalized approach to it. For example, I'll just always say, for example, certain use cases, you don't need large language models, for examples, to intervene. If it's rule based, well, you can use a standard machine language model, for example. But however, there are certain elements once you carve out which absolutely require the intervention of AI, whether it be whatever model you want to use, right? I mean, it could be OpenAI, it could be Gemini, it could be Anthropic Claude. So it's not one size fits all. You need to curate and decide exactly what sort of AI platforms you want to use. But more importantly, what use cases are you going to engage that AI interventions with? Because outcomes matter. It's not just saying, look, it's AI driven. What are the outcomes that is coming out from that AI interventions?
Amazing. And I also want to ask you about how culture, awareness, and education plays a role in like the industrial way and in any company that we see in Sri Lanka who's growing with technology. What's your point of view on that?
There's two aspects to it. One aspect is that there's a cohort of users that presume that AI is a silver bullet that can deliver outcomes overnight. I call it short termism. That has to be addressed, but in a uh, very pragmatic way. The second point is, are people ready in terms of digital literacy to embrace AI, both mentally as well as from a ground view perspective? Now, if you think that AI is going to come over and take over your job, I think that's the wrong perspective and prerogative. I think what you need to look at AI is how is it going to come in and basically empower me to make my day in a life or a week in a life in my work better. If I am doing mundane work, which could be done by AI assistance at half of the time, how could you repurpose for your time to even basically ramp yourself up or basically repurpose your focus on more strategic
Yeah,
things?
yeah.
So I think it's the mindset as well as ensuring that the foundational digital literacy comes into play to ensure that people understand how really to use AI now. Very simple example: you can't throw everything you want on ChatGPT. It's like using the likes of Gmail or any other publicly
Yeah.
available free email tier for official purposes.
Yeah.
But there are certain aspects that you can redact data and still continue to use that free tier.
Yeah.
But if you want to basically have much more privacy, then maybe you can go for a plus or enterprise, for example, or whether it be even Copilot. I don't want to uh, align myself with just one
Yeah.
vertical or
Yeah.
one provider.
Yeah.
There's so many things out there, and there's a lot of more agility coming in because it's not just the large language models which is out there now. There are small language models. There are models that you can deploy within your environment as a
Yeah. Yeah.
organization, and I think these are the key things that has to come into the foray in terms of education, because there's a lot of stigma around AI, and there will be with any new technology. But of course, there are fair concerns that we need to address as well.
Yeah, amazing. Since you mentioned about digital literacy and education, I think there's the younger generation who wants to pursue in cybersecurity and maybe in digital, any digital aspect in their career or studying into university. What's that one advice that you would love to give those give the youngsters, especially the
Yeah.
youth?
See, my main advice is to focus on the fundamentals, how AI really works, what is the intricacies behind a large language model, what do you mean by agentic AI, what steps do you need to take, or what areas do you need to learn to start using that LLMs in a customized way. We have these concepts called LangChain, where, for example, that's a very simple Python
Yeah,
language
yeah,
based approach for, I would say, chaining up a LLM to actual information you might have in an organization or even on a project that you do as a student, right? It's a very simple, fundamental approach. But if you do not take time to understand the foundational aspects of it, you might tend to drift away in just using systems without knowing the real nitty gritty of how best to use it.
yeah.
So my advice is, and it's fast evolving. I mean, if you look at
Definitely.
today, Gen AI is coming out with a storm, right? 2 years back, creating your own bot, AI bot was an in thing.
Yeah,
Today, you can create it on GPT, or even Copilot has its own agent that you can create without any code.
yeah,
But today, even an agentic AI approach, you can work on a open source platform like N8N,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You can take small use cases, be it whether it's a student-based academic project or whether it's a organizational use case. My advice to the young generation or the next generation is go into the fundamentals, and you need to keep pace with the changes beyond that.
That's some great info. Finally, if I ask, how important are cybersecurity summits that we are attending right now for the society and for the country as well?
I think, Russell, it's absolutely important because sometimes we tend to basically focus on the key nuances that drives business, but typically the focus on cybersecurity takes a backstage, if I may say so. So it's good to have these sort of conferences to ensure that you bring in that thought leadership and also that mind focus on certain aspects that you might have become a bit complacent on. So I think it's very important that we continue to have these discussions with diverse sets of thought leaders coming in and sharing their insights. But more importantly, I believe that the audience has to be biased towards execution as well post these events and
Yeah,
taking something back
yeah, yeah.
and working towards
100%.
doing some certain changes.
Thank you so much, Oshada, for
Pleasure as
stopping
always,
by.
Sal, to connect with you.
All
Thank
the
you.
best with your future and everything that you do.
You too. All the best to you as well. Thank you.